Welcome to the fifth episode of the Vietnam Weekly podcast. I'm your host, Mike Tatarski, and today I'm joined by Andrea Nguyen, a really great cookbook author and home chef. You can check out her work at vietworldkitchen.com. She's also published the well-known cookbook Vietnamese Food Any Day, and she walked me through some of the basics of cooking Vietnamese food at home, something I've been a bit intimidated by during lockdown when we have to cook every meal at home. So we talked about some of the staples you need from the store, some recipes for about half a dozen or so Vietnamese dishes, some of her favorites, some of her tips. So if you're kind of an amateur home cook like me, I really hope you take a lot away from this. I mean, even if you're not in lockdown, you can give this a try wherever you're listening. So I want to thank Andrea. This was really great for me, and I look forward to cooking with her tips. So let's get to the chat. I'm here with Andrea Nguyen, cookbook author, chef, writer, all sorts of kind of multi-hyphenate. So Andrea, thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Mike. I'm so interested in talking to you and seeing what's going on over there in Ho Chi Minh City.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just gave you a brief intro, but do you want to tell listeners a bit more about yourself and what you do?
Oh, sure. Gosh. It seems like, I just thought, we're just going to talk. And it's just like, we know each other already, Mike, but I don't know all your listeners and they don't know me. So my name is Andrea Nguyen, and I was born in Ho Chi Minh City when it was still Saigon. And my family left when I was 6 years old. And that was back in 1975. I've lived in the United States for most of my life, with brief stints in Asia. And I am a cookbook author, which is, interestingly, my dream job ever since I was a kid. And I never thought, that a refugee kid to America could get that kind of career. But I've been very lucky. And here I am. And I get to talk about and think about food for most of my waking moments.
Yeah, that's definitely not a bad thing to have to think about. Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you today. Actually, I have to credit my wonderful partner for this idea. But so when we were kind of talking by email, but Ho Chi Minh City and well, actually all of southern Vietnam has been under a quite strict lockdown for several weeks now. Hanoi is in a similar situation now. So, I mean, for people who may not be in the country right now, we can't, or there's no food delivery, not even street food or anything like that. So everything has been completely shut down for, we're in our fifth week of that now, meaning everyone has to cook at home if they're able to. I mean, you can get, ready-made meals at a convenience store or something, but that's not quite the same. And also a little bit tricky because you're not supposed to go out very much. So the idea was kind of to talk to you about maybe some basics of Vietnamese cooking. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other people like me who really miss Vietnamese food. I'm an okay cook, but I'm a bit intimidated by it. And I mean, you have a book, Vietnamese Food Any Day, which is kind of right in line with this, which I have a copy of, but is unfortunately in the US. So maybe just kind of as a starting point, I mean, what are some of the kind of the bare basics that you should have stocked in your kitchen if you want to cook some Vietnamese food?
Well, basically I tell people if I were to choose and be stuck on a desert island, I would make sure I had a bag of rice and a bottle of nước mắm. Okay. And that's basically, I mean, you can do a lot with those two things.
Okay.
Now we're not, you're not in that situation, even though it may feel extremely isolated these days. But, you guys you can go out and to shop for ingredients, correct? So I don't know if that means going to an indoor market or outdoors.
I was going to say, so traditional markets are by and large shut down. I think there's a few that maybe some specific like produce stalls are open, but you definitely can't go to like the wet markets you envision. So it's supermarkets or convenience stores, those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I've been to the supermarkets in Ho Chi Minh City, and they're well stocked. And so when you're there, you want to pick up your basics. You want to pick up the nước mắm. You want to pick up some xì dầu nước tương, and some cooking oil, and then aromatics like garlic and ginger and chilies. And I realized too that people probably have relatively small refrigerators in
Mm,
Ho Chi Minh City, not like what we have here in the States. So, but you can get small quantities and things like ginger, garlic, and onions. They can be kept out, at room temperature.
mm,
And limes, we need limes to make things kind of tart. But if that's not available, or you're short on fridge space or something like that, pick up a little vinegar. And
mm,
what I'm talking about, these are just pantry basics that people would need, and you
mm.
probably have salt and pepper and sugar at home. If people don't want to cook with sugar, honey, and I mean, and you can do simple little things to make your meals more comfortable. For example, you can make like some nước chấm, sort of like the foundation for it. So you can just like stir together some sugar with vinegar and water and season that with nước mắm and keep that
Mm.
in your fridge. Okay, add some
Oh.
water to it if you like. Keep that in your fridge as your nước chấm basis. And then when you want to use it, take it out, dilute it with water, add lime juice to it or a little more vinegar if you want, and then add your chilies. That could be, dai from a jar if you want to, or just squirt some of that Colimex dunguk in there,
Mm.
and nước chấm is something that I feel like will turn practically anything into Vietnamese food. And if you're a vegetarian, I know that there are nước mắm chay available now,
Mm.
vegetarian or vegan fish sauces that are sold. And so grab a bottle of that. The other thing that I feel is like magical for Vietnamese cooking, or anyway, one of my things that I keep in my back pocket is to make some pickled daikon and carrot. So đậu chua, right?
Mm.
I mean, you can, get some daikon and carrots and cut it up and put it up, and I throw a little salt and some sugar on there after I cut up the vegetables, and then just let them sit for a while. They're going to release their water, look like, they're weeping liquid. Drain
Mm.
it, then put it in a jar, and then add some vinegar and water and sugar, and mostly it's like I would say like a 2 to 3 ratio of
Mm.
water to vinegar, and then you would season it with sugar. So then you put all that together, and you can eat that. You can eat dochua in like an hour. And if you've and because
Okay.
a lot of people have air conditioning, thank goodness, you can actually leave that out.
Mm.
You
Mm.
don't have to refrigerate it because you may not have space in your fridge. But gosh, if you've got nước chấm, đậu chua, rice, then all you would need is like some protein and then some vegetables. So Mike, tell me like what kinds of things you would add to that, because I know, like, for example, you mentioned that you are a cơm tấm fan and you miss cơm tấm. So you've
Yes.
got nước chấm and you've got đậu chua, and you can make a pot of cơm tấm, which you would just cook like regular rice. Okay, but same ratio of water to rice is what I use. Um,
Mm.
and so let's say you've got those three things. So you've got like the basis of a data comes down. You've got like the rice plate information. All you
Okay.
got to do is drop down the protein element.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned com tam. So the other night we actually attempted to make it, although with polenta, which I know is very unorthodox, but we had a bunch of leftover polenta in the fridge and needed to use it. So I did a I was proud of myself for the pork chop marinade, but then went to plate it and realized I had overlooked the sauce. So it's good you mentioned dok cham, because we like ended up just using a little bit of bottled fish sauce, which was fine, but not quite the same experience. So that's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, if you and let's say you didn't have time to make nước chấm, okay, there's always like my little quickie is I'll take nước mắm and I'll dilute it, say with water. I would use like 2 parts nước mắm to 1 part water, and then I'll just add chilies. you know,
Mm, okay.
nice, easy going. That's like a simple dipping sauce. So, you can just dip whatever in there. You don't necessarily have to be taking your time, but that little thing that I told you about is just it's a very simple way to have nước chấm at the ready, and so that you can, have Vietnamese food any day that you want. You can I mean, if you're making polenta, Mike, that's pretty advanced cooking, my friend.
Well, in my defense,
So,
it's instant. It's instant polenta. It only takes a couple minutes in the pot. But thank you. So you mentioned com tam. Of course, that's a pretty big staple, especially here in the South for street food and things like that. Vietnamese cuisine, of course, is vast and varied, and region specific and all of that. And I know there are some genuinely complex soups and things like that. But what would you say are some other kind of staple dishes that wouldn't be terribly difficult for a home cook to make?
oh, I could eat gun any day, every day of the week,
Mm,
and gun is like so simple because all you need, and this is the way I learned from my mom, who's a northerner. She was born in Haizung.
mm,
So you take like half of a small onion, and slice it up. So about a half a cup of onion, and then saute that in a little bit of oil in a pot, for a few minutes until it's nice and translucent and soft and fragrant and sweet. And then whatever little bits of meat you like. Do you like ground pork is fine. Sliced pork is good. Chicken is good. Let's say you didn't want to have like any kind of, four-legged animals, and you just want to add like some water to it. So
hmm
add, you know, 4 or 5 cups of water to that, and then season it with salt and fish sauce. Throw some dry shrimp in there. Dry shrimp is like
mm.
a wonderful stealth ingredient, and then season that with salt and nước mắm. Bring it to a boil, and you may have meat in there or not, right? But the nước mắm, the salt, and if you've added dry shrimp, those are like total ingredients for umami. Ingredients for the essence of Vietnamese savory foods, đậm đà. Everyone wants đậm đà food, but I'm telling you, you don't necessarily need to put like MSG in there unless you want to, because that's not a problem either. And then once you bring that to a simmer, let it like kind of softly, gently boil for a few minutes to develop flavor. And then you're going to drop a ton of greens in there, a
Mm.
ton. Like, if you're into rau muống, put it in there, or any kind of rau cải, any kind of mustard greens. Oh my goodness, so lovely. And then let the greens wilt, and you've got your pot of gun. If you want to add razzle dazzle, you can add a little, chopped ginger at the end, throw a bunch of herbs in, and your gun at dinner can, with leftovers, can turn into lunch the next day, especially if you drop, like, let's say, a little bundle of glass noodles, miên,
Mm.
and you rehydrate those and then drop them in, and you've got a little noodle soup for lunch.
Oh, nice.
So I'm always like the queen of leftovers. So my gun for dinner will turn into lunch the next day. My husband
Okay.
knows what my program is when I'm like, don't eat up all the gun tonight because it's
Right,
gonna. And he
right.
goes, I know it'll be my lunch tomorrow.
Well, I mean, leftovers are much appreciated. Well, certainly in my house, but especially right now, given the situation with limited going outside and all of that, that's really handy. So you just mentioned mian. I mean, glass noodles, but noodle dishes is something. I mean, making like pasta and Italian dishes we've explored, but not like vermicelli and those sorts of things. So mian sao or bun thịt nướng or something along those lines. What would preparing that be like, or any of those sorts of, I guess, dry noodle dishes?
Sure, sure. So that would be like Monko dry dishes. And so you mentioned that you guys had the pork chop the other night with your gum thumb. So
Hmm
that's in your wheelhouse. So reproduce that that pork chop, and then for a bowl of bún, thịt nướng, right? You can just then put your chopped. You've got lettuce in there. If you've got baby greens, maybe there's some, coming in from Dalat or something like that. You can like put that in your bowl, along with some bean sprouts if you want to, for crunch, or cucumber in there if you'd like, and then throw in your herbs. So what you're doing at that point is you're creating a salad mixture in the bottom of the bowl, right? You've
Mm.
got the lettuce, you've got your crunchy raw elements, you've got your herbs, and then you're going to put your boon on top. And if you cannot get fresh boon, then by all means use dry boon. And the thing with boon is that you've got to like eat it. Most of the time, you got to eat it after you boil it. It doesn't keep refrigerated very well because some,
Mm.
depending on the product, I know that products have changed a lot. But if it's all rice, you need to boil it and then drain it and eat it that day because it won't keep overnight very well because the strands just break. Anyway, so you've got your fluffy, boon. And if it's kind of hard and dry, microwave it. I know a lot of people in Ho Chi Minh City and elsewhere in Vietnam in the cities have microwave ovens.
Mm.
So just, nuke it until they soften a little bit, and then let them come to room temperature before you top your vegetables, your salad mixture with the boon.
Mm.
And then, that the dua that I spoke about earlier, the pickle, now's the time to pull that out and then add it
Okay.
to your bowl. And
Okay.
then you can top it with whatever protein you'd like. It could be, the
Nice.
pork
Okay.
chop sliced up, and then you've got your nuc jam on the side. You may say, "Oh my gosh, but where are my fried shallots, Han Phi?" You may
Mm.
not have it on hand, and that's not going to be a deal breaker because you've got all these other elements for a really wonderful, healthy meal.
Mm. Okay. And I guess kind of on the potentially more healthy front, I mean, we've talked about some, protein, meat-based dishes. I'm not a vegetarian, but I know plenty of people are. And I mean, particularly, I do really enjoy a lot of tofu dishes, especially like the, stir-fried lemongrass and with chili tofu with, I guess those ingredients are pretty obvious from the name. But what about some like, tofu approaches or other vegetarian style dishes?
Sure. I mean, it's the cool thing about being in country in Vietnam is that you can buy pre-fried tofu pretty easily.
Hmm.
So that means that you can make a curry loaded with vegetables. I pack my curry with vegetables, not just potatoes, because it kind of seems like redundant, right? You're going to eat it with rice or banh mi, but then you got potatoes in there. Well, you can back off the potatoes and you can load it up with like add carrots and maybe if you've got some broccoli or green beans this time of the year are
Mm.
great too. And then you can add your fried tofu in there and it'll absorb the flavors of the curry and just be absolutely wonderful. You've got, really a complete meal right there. You just have to put it over, you can have it with bread. You can thin it out a little bit and turn it into a noodle soup, right? Or you can have it over rice. So, I mean, one dish served three ways. And so make a big pot of curry, And so I think that's a really great way because that lemongrass tofu dish that you mentioned, there's oftentimes a little bit of curry powder added in there.
Mm. Okay.
And so that's why it got me thinking about curries. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just kind of walk through a couple more sort of general types of food I'm thinking of. I mean, this one to me seems a little more complex, but I could be wrong. But kind of the caw, like dried, kind of the clay pot fish or pork
Oh,
or
yeah.
what have you, is to me that seems like it might be a bit more challenging. But am I wrong?
It's totally homey, old school Vietnamese food. What is the hardest thing that trips people up is making the nước màu, the caramel sauce.
Mm.
So, but all that is sugar and that's nearly burnt and then diluted.
Okay.
And so it's that caramelization that really trips people up. And so I go through great lengths in Vietnamese food any day. We had process shots taken of the different stages. of the coloration and stuff. And the recipe is like 2 pages long because I go into great details to explain how the color changes and what I do in there. Sometimes like it crystallizes, so you can add a little drop of acid by way of lime juice or vinegar,
Mm.
something like that, in with the sugar. And so use like a heavy little pot to melt the sugar in. And then once it achieves the color that you want, set that very, very hot pot, smoky pot into like a bowl of water where it will cool very quickly. And then add then add fresh water to it so that it dilutes it. So that way because you've caramelized the sugar and you've taken it to a point where if you let it cool, it's just going to be a hard mass. So you've got
Mm.
to dilute it while it's warm so that you can keep it around. And once
Okay.
you've made that caramel sauce, you can keep it at room temperature indefinitely or keep it refrigerated. Um, and then you're on your way to making caw, whether if, that could be like fish caw, shrimp caw, chicken caw. You can put tofu in there with soy sauce. But, the elements are, I think that I mean, in Vietnam, you can probably buy very, very good caramel sauce that is already produced and in a jar or container of some sort. So if there's a particular brand that someone enjoys, by all means, that use it. You're just going to choose your protein, you choose your adventure,
Mm.
and you would what you typically do for caw is that well, let's say like you want to have the classic Southern Vietnamese like thịt kho trứng, right?
Mm.
So you would get like some chunks of fatty pork and then, salt and pepper it, season it, and then sear it off. And then add your caramel sauce, fish sauce, and maybe a little bit of extra sugar if you want, but hold off on it. Then add your nước dừa, your coconut water,
Mm.
and then you're just going to simmer that until the pork is tender, and you may have to season it a little bit more the back end, um, but you want to hold off, and after the pork is tender, and I mean tender like you can put a knife tip part way through the
Okay.
pork chunks. Then you cook down the boil everything down, reduce the coconut water, and then season it again with fish sauce or salt if you want to, and then you can tweak the color if you want
Mm.
as well. And then you can drop in your boiled eggs that have been peeled at
Okay.
the end. So then
Gotcha.
you've got that pot of caw, and then you can, oh gosh, eat it for days because it's like a preserved food. It's so
Mm.
delicious and it's so Southern Vietnamese. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's no, it's one of my favorites for sure. So I guess if I'm trying to think of a couple more things, I mean, if somebody was really feeling adventurous and wanted to approach, I don't know, pho or something, which of course I know there's varieties of, and in my mind is definitely difficult. I mean, I know there's kind of the base spices like star anise and things like that. But if somebody wanted to attempt it, what would you tell them?
but if someone wanted to make pho, I would say make chicken pho, not beef pho. The reason is that with chicken pho, you just need chicken. You don't, there are no I mean, unless you really are like, I want all the parts, the offal and stuff. But otherwise, you just need a chicken. And it's pretty straightforward. You can get bones and stuff like that, and and use the spices that you like, and simmer the chicken until it's done to your liking, and add some bones in there if that's available. Otherwise, like you can just have the the chicken be flavoring the broth itself, and then season it at the back end with fish sauce and MSG, and then serve it up with the bun pho and all the other accoutrements that you like. But chicken pho is a lot easier. Beef pho requires all these bones, and it's pretty labor intensive.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people have in Vietnam, pressure cookers, I know that they are gaining in popularity, but pressure cookers, doesn't they don't require that you heat up your home either.
Okay.
So that's an option.
Okay.
Or I mean, you can just like have instant pho and be okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like we would eat instant ramen, and so
Yeah.
instant pho is all right, and you can
Yeah.
doctor that up. You don't
Okay.
have to. I mean, we're in a pandemic here, so play
Yeah. Yeah.
and have
Exactly.
no shame. You just need some food, and you're going to be cooking for yourself for many days.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. All right. So I think that's kind of what I had. Most of the basics I had in mind. I mean, do you have any other favorite? I'm sure you have many, but any particular favorite dishes that, you think people should take a shot at?
Well, I think that to eat healthfully, you can always you need to eat your vegetables, your stir fry vegetables, and it doesn't have to be rau muống all the time, even though I know that's very plentiful. But you can and just you get it in your can, you get it in your stir fries. You can attempt like some really basic gỏi and maybe with cabbage or something like that. But oftentimes, like people are intimidated by making gỏi, the Vietnamese salads, because there's like that's so labor intensive, and we consider it to be these special event composed salads that have loaded with chicken and shrimp and nuts and blah blah blah, all of this stuff that you're like, oh my god, I'm so tired just like looking at the ingredient list that I have to shop for. Well, what I oftentimes do is I choose only one protein to put in there. I cut out all the protein, and I just focus on the vegetables, the herbs, maybe some peanuts, and then my nước chấm. And that in and of itself makes a lovely, lovely salad. And, and it's really nice. And you can put that together and it's very healthful. And a lot of times with gỏi, the vegetables can be prepped in advance. There are different dressings that you use. So, and if you're in a really tight pinch, then of course you can use nước chấm, but oftentimes with gỏi, the dressing is a little bit more intense than nước chấm. And so, I would, so that's something that people don't think that they can make or they should make, but they can totally do that at home. You're going to have a little bit more time, so you can practice your knife skills and, chop things up.
Yeah, that's great. That had never even crossed my mind. And knife skills could always use improving. Yeah, so I think that's a really good. I don't want to overwhelm people. I think that's a really good overview of multiple different types of dishes and areas of cuisine. And I guess, I mean, you've already shown that a lot can be done. But if somebody was like, "There's no way I could ever cook Vietnamese food. This is really intimidating." I mean, what would you tell that person?
I would tell them to make banh mi. I mean, goodness, right? I mean, you buy that. You can buy all the components at the store.
Mm.
And the mayonnaise. I've seen those little koopy things
Mm.
at the market in
Hmm.
Saigon, different flavored koopy mayonnaises. I'm sure that do chua is sold
Hmm.
pre-made at the market too. And then you've got then it's just the vegetables. You've got your herbs in there, cilantro if you want hung quay, that's cool. If you want mint, that's fabulous. And you've got your cucumber, you want your nước tương or the Maggi seasoning sauce there. And then you got your bread, and then you can choose to fill that with whatever you want. Fry an egg if you want, or just buy, giò chả and slice it up and tuck it in
Sure.
there. There is no excuse. Banh mi is like doable for
Yeah,
everybody.
definitely. Yeah, I mean that's a staple, of course, and one that I can't wait to be able to eat again on the street. um, well, Andrea, I mean, I think that's probably a decent place to wind up right now. So thank you so much for talking through some Vietnamese food with me. Really appreciate that, and hope people can give these a shot in their own kitchen at home. I'm definitely looking forward to trying some more. after the pork chop the other day. Um, and yeah, I mean, thank you again, much appreciated, and always a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mike. I always keep up with what you're doing over there on social media, and I hope that this lockdown doesn't last too much longer for folks, because I think about the people who depend on their livelihoods to sell food to others on the streets, and this must be a very, very difficult time for them. So because they cannot prepare food for others, and so I hope that everything loosens up, and everyone can go on sort of living normal lives again over
Yeah,
there.
me too. I mean,
Thank you so much.
I'm certainly lucky in with the situation I have, but I have been wondering about the couple that normally sells banh ut in the morning around the corner, and the lady selling banh seo in the evening on the street outside. So yeah, I completely agree with your sentiments.
Yeah, I feel for them very much, because you know, they don't get to work from
Right.
home. Their work is on the street. That's where they make a living. So, my goodness, you get Ben Ut and Ben Seo. Wow. Okay. Whenever I can get back to Vietnam, I am going to hunt you down, my
Yes,
friend.
yes,
And
absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
all right.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
again.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate you reaching out, and I hope that everything turns out well for folks over there.
Yes, thank you.
Godspeed.